Did the mainstream media get off to a flying start for 2024 or what? Sky News broke the ripper story about the jihadist threat from a Qantas flight attendant wearing a lapel pin with a little Palestinian flag on it. This just put us in the shade here in independent media land. We did have Rex Patrick breaking the Albo secret diary story, followed up by Sky News, funnily enough. He also had the sly funding of the US Trident nuclear weapons program by Australian taxpayers. Thank you, taxpayers. We also carried the sports bet accounting expose, big tax scam by Australia's online bookie. And he also had the scoop on the government's gambling inquiry, an inquiry subverted by myriad gambling lobby groups. Big stories, but nothing in the league of Sky News and the Qantas Pin. Totally eclipsed by this yarn we were, this groundbreaking Herculean yarn. It was exclusive too, I tell you, exclusive. The Qantas Pin story, inimitable. It had everything. It had a terrorist threat, jihadism, and even Qantas itself. It always gets eyeballs, Qantas. Strap on your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. We're in for a turbulent ride. The Sky News presenter, Caroline, after expressing deep concern with furrowed brow about the high indignation, Fox News-esque it was even, this disturbing event, a Qantas flight attendant wearing a lapel pin. And then she introduced a young fellow who had been on the same flight. Enter the victim, Harrison Graffinakis. How does it make you feel seeing these badges? Asked Caroline. Intimidated, Harrison responded. I didn't particularly feel safe. He went on to say, jihadism, you don't know what could happen next. I think Qantas must sack the staff that did it. Anyway, as it turns out, Harrison is a Liberal Party staffer, formerly with Michael Sukkar's office, and after that, some kind of party management position or functionary position in the Tasmanian branch. Naturally, the story was followed up by the Australian, Rupert Murdoch's The Australian, and none other than the Daily Mail, of course. It was such a big story that Sky felt compelled to do the big follow-up the next night, again calling for this poor woman to be sacked. They doxed her, mentioned her name, after hunting her down on Facebook. They humiliated her, betrayed her as some kind of terror threat, and then they reeled out none other than the AJA, the Australian Jewish Association, David Adler's mob. This is kind of like Lyle Shelton's Christian lobby group. Most normal Christians, just like the Jewish people, look at this sort of with a bit of a you feel about it whenever they come out and say something. And so it was, though, that the AJA started rattling the cages, also calling for the sacking of this Qantas flight attendant. Such had been the backlash, though, on social media, calling this a beat-up. But there are two new victims now on the second night on Sky News follow-up of its major scoop. The new victims were none other than Caroline and Harrison themselves. Yes, they made themselves the victims. Caroline said, Harrison has become the victim of a targeted campaign, not the woman who they bullied across Australian airwaves. It was poor old Caroline and Harrison. They were the victims of the backlash. No way Sky does targeted campaigns, or the Liberal Party. Oh, the tissues. Oh, the violins. News.com piled in too, of course, another Murdoch property. Fury screamed the headline, the React story, including the video again of victim Harrison and victim Caroline. But the Sky victimhood narrative was not enough. The AJA then rolled out a petition on the back of the Sky News coverage of Qantas Pingate. The petition to get this poor woman the sack. More than 6,000 signatories now have signed up on the change.org petition calling for this woman wearing the lapel pin with a little Palestinian flag on it to get the sack. Check out the comments. It's great stuff. Disgusting, disgraceful, Hamas, anti-Semitic, Hamas, terrorist flag, Hamas, murderers. They started it. Evil, Hamas, bandwagon of hate. Plane hijacking. Christian will be beheaded in the name of Allah. This one from China. Racism comes in many forms, including supporting terror. It's who blow up planes. How can one be sure this woman is not a terrorist? Actually, the service was reportedly bad, so maybe she was not a bona fide member of staff. Or this one from Emma. The amount of vile anti-Semitism in this country needs to stop. We cannot have Qantas staff pressing their hatred upon us in their place of work. This vile, disgusting, overweight woman needs to be sacked. How can Qantas employ her when she is clearly overweight and probably does not meet health and safety requirements? Her name is such and such, doxed again. Now, I thought she looked like quite a nice woman, actually, in the photograph, which some tosser had taken of her without her permission, then beaten up into a national story. I wonder who that was, the photographer. No doubt the woman is desperately sad at the daily slaughter of Palestinians, just as other humane Australians are, whether they be Jewish, Palestinian, or any other race. As the change petition rolls on, we ought to give Qantas a nod for doing the right thing because they haven't caved into the Murdoch's bullies and sacked this woman. Yes, it is a breach, a technical breach of Qantas uniform policy, but hey, how minuscule, how pin-sized a breach it is. Compare and contrast with the bomb threat this week. A mock bomb it was, left on the car of a guy in South Sydney who had the temerity to fly a Palestinian flag on his house. Where is the Sky News investigation into this? This act of terrorism, the pin versus the bomb. The Sky News coverage is non-existent. All this goes to say that the media has completely collapsed. It is just an organ of propaganda more now than ever. Now, we checked the Murdoch homepages for the story about the bomb. Couldn't find anything there. We checked the SMH and of course the Age, which is the SMH but in a different town. Nothing there. When you look at it, we went out and bought the papers to see how they treated this bomb threat, because let's face it, if it was a threat against the Zionists, it would be wall-to-wall, front page, daily coverage leading the nightly news bulletins. But here we have it, this waste of a tree. It's not on the front page. It's not the golden day at the Globes or the private school fees going through the roof. Not on page 2. On page 3, there's more private school fees on page 3. Oh, the cost of a coal bailout. Not on page 4. Oh, hang on. Oh, no. There's a Ferris. No, not on page 4. Not on page 5. Let's have a look at this. Well, there it is, buried on the inside page, which in newspaper parlance is a bad spot to be. Down the bottom, of course. There it is. Down the bottom. Bomb scare outside home that flew Palestinian flag, a suspicious device, etc. Next to the much larger Cocoa Republic advertisement. Of course, we went to the Australian, this absolute rag. Apart from the fossil fuel coverage at the top, the splash, we went looking for this story in the paper, and guess what? It wasn't there. The bomb story wasn't there. Same deal as the firebombing the Palestinian bakery in Caulfield in Melbourne. Not a sign of it. What a complete joke it is. The Murdoch press just punches down. They talk about welfare bludgers, but they don't talk about corporate welfare bludgers like News Corporation itself. It doesn't pay any tax. They drive small people, like this poor Qantas stewardess, this flight attendant, to the brink. They ruin their lives, wreck their lives deliberately. And I ask, because we're not in the business of punching down here at Michael West Media, we're in the business of punching up. And I ask Paul Whittaker, who is the head of Sky. It's not particularly Caroline's fault. She's just a functionary just doing ridiculous journalism. It's not journalism, it's just propaganda. But we asked Paul Whittaker, the head of Sky, why don't you come on the West Report? Let's debate how pathetic and toxic your journalism is. Why don't you come on the West Report and let's have a chat? Thank you for your support. Like, share and comment in the space below, and have a great 2024.